You're in the right place. Thank you for bringing us here. If you wouldn't mind telling us who you are, and then we'll tell you who we are.
Good afternoon. We're Reno High School's Unit 6. My name is Chloe Kinnerson, and I will be attending the University of British Columbia.
Hi, my name is JC Carey, and I will be attending the University of Washington.
I'm Mira Costa, and I will be attending the University of California, Santa Cruz.
My name is Ben Smith. I'll be attending the University of Nevada. Our unit coach is Mr. Danny Martindale, and our teacher is Mr. Richard Clark.
Hello there. Great. Tom?
I'm Tom Vance. I'm a professor at Kansas State University.
I'm Nan Waller. I'm a circuit court judge, a trial judge in Portland, Oregon.
My name is Canton Steele, and I retired as a judge on the U.S. Civilian Board of Contract Appeals. I handle federal government contract disputes around the country. So we're doing question 1 today. And I will read that. Stick up your hand in the back there if you can't understand me. As Nan said before, I'll use my judge voice here. Try. Today, more than 1 million immigrants come to the United States each year, more than to any other country in the world. In 1970, immigrants were 4.7% of the population. Today, there are more than 43 million immigrants living in the United States, which is around 14% of the population. What are some of the most commonly claimed benefits and costs of immigration? What evidence supports or contradicts these claims? What are the advantages and disadvantages of our present immigration policy? And how great a problem is illegal immigration? And what are our current policies for dealing with it? What changes, if any, would you suggest? Please explain your position. You may begin.
In a 2006 speech, President George W. Bush said, "We are a nation of laws, and we must enforce our laws. We're also a nation of immigrants, and we must uphold that tradition, which has strengthened our country in so many ways." These are not contradictory goals. America can be a lawful society and a welcoming society at the same time. One benefit of immigration is an increase in manual laborers. The U.S. Department of Agriculture estimates they make up 71% of its workforce. And the Center for North American Studies reports a loss of immigrant labor in the dairy industry would cut U.S. economic output by $32.1 billion per year.
It is perceived that immigration has a negative economic impact. Public education burdens taxpayers because all children, regardless of citizenship status, are guaranteed the right to education, granted in the 1982 Supreme Court case, Plyler v. Doe. However, most economic fears are exaggerated. In 2016, the Institute on Taxation and Economic Policy reported undocumented immigrants contributed $11.74 billion in state and local taxes. According to the Congressional Budget Office, $7 billion goes to Social Security and $1.5 billion to Medicare.
There's also a fear that immigrants threaten public safety. After Pearl Harbor, Executive Order 9066 forced Japanese Americans into internment camps. Despite the human rights violations, the Supreme Court upheld the order in 1944 in Korematsu v. U.S. Similar xenophobic fears persist today. In the 2019 State of the Union address, President Trump referenced the murders committed by an undocumented immigrant in our hometown of Reno, Nevada.
However, select instances do not represent groups as a whole. The 2015 Cato Institute study found that proportionally, undocumented immigrants had 50% less criminal convictions than native-born citizens, while documented immigrants had 66% less convictions. Family migration is one advantage of our present immigration policy. Around 70% of green cards are given to immigrants who already have family members with U.S. citizenship, giving people who may lack higher educations or skills the opportunity to immigrate and live with their families.
Increasingly strict qualifications for asylum are a disadvantage of current immigration policy. The Immigration and Nationality Act of 1952 allows the Attorney General to grant asylum. The application is offered to those facing prosecution based on race, religion, nationality, political opinion, and membership in particular social groups. In 2018, Attorney General Jeff Sessions mandated gang violence and domestic abuse were no longer acceptable reasons to be granted asylum.
Illegal immigration is not as great of an issue as sometimes argued. By paying taxes and entering the workforce, these immigrants still contribute to the country. However, undocumented status is not ideal. In 38 states, these immigrants cannot get driver's licenses or car insurance. Undocumented immigrants are also often afraid to report crimes to police or go to court in fear of being deported.
In order to deal with illegal immigration, U.S. Customs and Border Protections have the authority to operate within 100 miles of any U.S. border. Within this zone, Fourth Amendment protections against random and arbitrary searches don't fully apply, allowing Border Patrol agents to conduct routine searches at highway checkpoints without warrants.
Established in the 1896 Supreme Court case Wong v. the U.S., all people on U.S. soil have the right to due process granted in the Fifth and Sixth Amendments. However, the Sixth Amendment provides protections for criminal cases only, and immigration cases, including deportation proceedings, are civil. The right to counsel must be expanded to immigration cases as an implied due process right under Matthews v. Eldridge and the Fifth Amendment because the risk of an erroneous decision without a lawyer is high. While there are costs to immigration, it is essential to the United States' prosperity. As President Bush stated, enforcing our laws and being welcoming are not contradictory goals. Thank you.
Great, thank you. Tom, you want to start?
Yeah, it seems to be part of our immigration policy is rooted in the Constitution. And specifically in the 14th Amendment, where we have a definition of citizenship, and we also have the idea of birthright citizenship. If you're born here, regardless of your parents, you're automatically a citizen. Would you support or oppose an amendment to the Constitution doing away with birthright citizenship? And please tell me your reasoning and logic, either way.
I would strongly disagree with the passing an amendment to get rid of birthright citizenship. That is an incredibly important aspect of American society, especially when we look to people whose parents may not have been born in the country, but they end up immigrating to the United States and have kids there. These children end up growing up in the United States, and if we don't have birthright citizenship, then they don't have a place to call home, even though they're the ones who grew up speaking the English language in America and growing up and being taught in American schools. And this is exactly the type of thing that's trying to be solved with the DACA program, in which children of immigrants but are born in the United States, well, with the DACA program specifically, they grew up in the United States, they weren't born here. However, that same idea still applies, in which people who have grown up in the United States and especially born here do deserve citizenship.
And if we look at the 1898 Supreme Court case, Wong v. the U.S., this Chinese man had his parents immigrate to the United States. They were not U.S. citizens. However, he was born in the United States, he grew up in the United States. He went to college back in China, and when he came back to the U.S., because of the Chinese Exclusion Acts, he was not allowed. He was stopped at the border. He was not allowed to enter back into the United States because they didn't believe he was a U.S. citizen. So he had to prove through a Supreme Court case that he was a citizen. So this is why we need this birthright citizenship, so people can't be racially profiled to not be allowed into the U.S.
That's my question. What responsibilities, if any, do you think American citizens should have regarding immigrants?
American citizens have the responsibility to be educated. A lot of the issues we see concerning immigration, especially the issue of undocumented immigrants, come from people having very xenophobic fears about immigrants and having these ideas of us versus them and the separation. And so as American citizens, we have a responsibility to educate our society and the people around us and our children that more diversity and tolerance is a better thing for our society and will create better goals overall, and to be able to be more inclusive.
I also think that with looking back in our history, our country was founded with people coming to this country from Europe, with people going to Plymouth Rock and colonizing the East Coast. And so with that, you see that our country has always had immigration, and we have always tried to racially profile one group or another at one point in our history. But I think it's important to realize that we keep moving forward, and that it's important for our country to keep accepting people in that way.
I agree with my colleague, and one of the biggest misconceptions about immigrants is that they're dangerous. This is something that President Donald Trump has implied. However, if you look at the statistics, immigrants, and then particularly undocumented immigrants, commit far less crimes than actual American citizens because they are afraid that if they get arrested for a minor crime, they'll be deported.
Great, thank you. The Supreme Court this week just held argument on whether or not there should be added a question of citizenship to the 2020 census. What do you think the Supreme Court should do, and what do you think the impacts of the decision either way would be?
I believe that the Supreme Court should rule this in the way that there should not be a question added to the census, because so many people living in very highly populated cities answer the census questions currently, even though they are illegal citizens. But if that were were to happen in states such as California, New York, Texas even, you would get a loss of representation in the House of Representatives because the census would not properly reflect the amount of people in each of those states.
And
So I believe that the Supreme Court is actually going to end up ruling that the census question is allowed because it's not unconstitutional. The census is meant to count everyone in the entire country. It doesn't specify citizenship, and so that question itself is not unconstitutional. In fact, Justice Brett Kavanaugh, in his writings about it, have discussed how other countries, including the UN as a whole, actually believe that this question should be asked on the census to have a better idea of the makeup of the country. However, when it comes to whether or not the question should be added, I agree with the American Civil Liberties Union in that this question should not be added because it discourages undocumented immigrants from answering the question, which, as my colleague stated, will probably lead to underrepresentation.
Should undocumented aliens, resident aliens, and American citizens all enjoy the protection of rights?
Absolutely. Under the 14th Amendment, it states that all people in the United States are granted the rights and liberties in the Bill of Rights. So whether or not you are a citizen, you should have these rights and protections granted in the Constitution. And even though you may not be a citizen at the time, I'm sure many are working towards citizenship, so they should still be able to enjoy
What
these
about
liberties.
undocumented aliens? Should they also have rights? And if so, why? Philosophically, why should it be? Why?
Yes, they should still have these rights, and an example of this could be seen in California, in which an appeals court, may I please continue my answer? In which an appeals court ruled that following initial immigration screenings, to determine whether or not immigrants seeking refugee have credible fear, they can actually appeal their decision and then be seen by an immigration judge in front of the court. So this is showing that we are extending rights to not only citizens or resident aliens, but including undocumented aliens as well.
great job. Greg, I hope you had fun doing that because I sure had fun listening to you. Tom, do you want to?
So, did we just get lucky and we just happened to ask the questions that you all could just knock out of the park, or more likely you just really knew your stuff so well? I want to make a little different comment here and say that the level of specificity, right, in terms of your understanding of not just being able to say, you know, there was this court case. No, you knew the details of the court case. You knew the key facts of the case and what was at stake and how that influenced us. And I really particularly appreciated that component of your performance today. I mean, let's be honest, it's in the follow-up questions where we really get to judge how much, you gave some hints of your knowledge in the prepared remarks, but then during the follow-up questions, again, you were able, off the top of your head, to give really clear, credible, specific responses. Excellent job.
Very, very well done. I hear lots of lawyers in front of me, and you would stand right up next to any of them in terms of your poise, quality of your presentation. You talk about in some of the answers about the need to separate in this area facts from myth, and it was so clear that you, in preparing for this and preparing, you didn't know the extra questions we were going to ask, but you were able to apply facts, case law, and then bring it all back together again. So very well done.
Thank you. I really appreciate it as well. Particularly your discussions about asylum were very interesting and well thought out. I also appreciated hearing one side of the argument and then that argument responded to. Chloe, I think you did that particularly, that made me make note of it, but all of you were able to do that. You recognized that there are two sides in some of these questions, and you evaluated which side you agreed with and why, and told us. And as Judge Waller has said, I'm very happy to hear all of you educating yourselves, because we're all going to need to rely on this year, and that's, you know, not too long before I'm sitting in a rocking chair. And it's gonna be really nice to know that you all are representing me. We don't know what your plans are in life, but at the very least, you're gonna be wonderful citizens and educate your families and friends around you. But I hope you'll think about being lawyers or judges or especially representatives in local, state, or federal government for us, because we need you. And thank you, that's why I'm here, is to help you get there. So congratulations.
Thank you.